Lens, the internet's only live streaming roundtable discussion podcast, featuring Zach Roberts, Ron Hamilton, Travis Keys, and your host, David J. Murphy. Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 177, our background noise special edition. We've got a great lineup of awesome panelists here tonight, but let's go ahead and introduce our regulars, my co-hosts. Of course, Ron Hamilton. Hello, Ron from Hawaii. How are you?
Aloha, everyone. Sunny and warm here in Hawaii, and the background noise is minimum at the moment.
Yeah, we'll get the occasional police siren, of course, I'm sure. Travis Keys, of course, joining us from near New York City. What kind of background noise should we expect from you tonight?
I'm actually on the lower end tonight. I mean, other than yeah, it's a quiet night here. You might hear a little screaming here and there, but just know it.
Good. That's pretty much normal for you. The occasional screaming.
Yeah, nothing to see here.
Indeed. Joining us all the way from background noise of the kitchen is our first guest tonight, Leah Katherine Millis. Leah, please tell us about yourself.
Hello, I am a senior photographer based in Washington, D.C. for Reuters, and I mostly cover politics and the president, and also breaking news around the country and in other countries as well. And I started off my career in newspapers.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, glad to have you tonight. Of course, I saw you at Focus on the Story 2019 yesterday. You were giving a panel about all the awesome work you've done covering the immigration crisis. How was that experience for you?
Wow, that's a loaded question. It was quite an honor to be able to go on the story. As I said, I started in newspapers here in the U.S., and they kind of don't really have budgets for travel anymore. So it was pretty exciting for me to be able to do that really for the first time last year in my career.
Yeah.
But it was overwhelming. It was humbling. It was something that I think sometimes you have moments when you're witnessing something historic, and in this case, I remember having a moment where I was thinking, this is our new normal, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. In fact, a new normal is probably not even proper. It will probably get worse from what we saw last year, but we're going to be seeing a lot more of this crisis, migration, and so yeah, it was a pretty incredible experience.
Definitely. You're on stage with some very other renowned visual journalists, obviously Carol Guzzi and others. So great panel. I learned a lot. Well done, and again, awesome experience. If you had a chance to go to it, Focus on the Story 2019 was an awesome time. I got the opportunity to go, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I do want to introduce our other guest for this week. You won't see her picture because that's for a very important reason, but I'd like to introduce Glinski. Stefanie Glinski, can you please tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm a photojournalist currently based in Afghanistan. Previously, in Sudan with AFP, and yeah, if you hear any background noises from me, that's probably helicopters. They usually go over my house quite frequently. Right. It's early morning here, just shortly after 5 a.m. So, yeah.
And let's let people know just exactly where you are. You're in Afghanistan right now, right?
I am, yes, correct. I've been here for the past 5 months, and I work here as a photojournalist. And it's a great opportunity to get around the country, pretty much explore different issues. I think as a female photographer especially, I get a lot of good access. So yeah, I spend most of my time traveling around, meeting different people. Based here in Kabul, where I'm right now, and usually during the week I'm part of it.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, Leah, I'm going to mute you for just a second because your background noise is a little bit loud. We'll get back to you in a second. Stefanie, you've been actually overseas for, you said, I think the past 12 years, right? Or am I mistaken?
Correct. Yes.
12 years.
That's,
so,
yeah.
just briefly talk about that. Where have you been in the last 12 years?
I was based in London for a bit and then going in and out, covering a number of different, I guess, natural disasters as well as health issues, which included the Ebola crisis in West Africa, the Nepal earthquake, obviously Nepal. I was living in Nepal during that time when the earthquake happened. And then for the past couple years, I was in South Sudan, focusing on the civil war as well as the humanitarian situation for AFP. And then I've been here in Afghanistan. So yeah, quite a range of countries, a lot of short-term assignments as well as.
And you work for
long between South Afghanistan and Nepal. I am now working as a freelancer. Yeah, it was a kind of a personal choice to come here to Afghanistan. I've always been interested in the context, the people, the war that's been going on for way too long. So came here earlier this year and now work for different clients, shooting throughout the country.
Okay, great. Well, glad to have you on. Before we get into tonight's show and talk about all the topics we're going to talk about today, I want to let everyone know that I am actually giving away a book. It's called No Place on Earth. It was actually created by Patrick Brown in conjunction with Photo Evidence. I picked up this book at the recent Focus on the Story event. Patrick was nice enough to sign the book, and I think it's an awesome... I'll just show that signature to our viewing audience. There's the signature. I'm going to be giving this away this book because it's just such an important story. You know, he gave a great talk, and he talked about, of course, what's going on in Rohingya. And I think it's better for this book to be distributed amongst, hopefully, a lucky listener and spread the story of what's going on in Rohingya than it would be to just sit on my shelf as a book. Because, again, it's a very significant and important story. And just the drama and what he came across with it was very moving. So, again, if you'd like to win this book, it was $60. I paid for it myself, but it's again an important book and signed by the author. I think it's only significant. It's going to raise in value. If you'd like to win this book, all you have to do is email info@aroundthelens with pretty much anything. Just put put book contest in the subject line, and email me at info@aroundthelens and just say something. You know, you can either give the show some praise, say what you like about it, say what you don't like about it, maybe say like why you would become a patron, why you wouldn't become a patron. You know, anything you want to say, a suggestion for a topic or a comment, just email me at info@aroundthelens. Subject line, book contest, before, actually by Father's Day, which I think is June 16th. Which, by the way, make a great Father's Day present. Just saying. Put that email create an email right now. Send it to me. By June 16th, I'll pick the winner on June 17th, and I'll send it out as soon as I figure out who's going to get it. But yeah, this will go to one lucky winner. So please, by all means, let me know. I'd love to share this book with someone else. So awesome experience. I interviewed Pat Brown, the photographer, World Press Photo winner and author. Obviously, photographer behind a lot of the photographs in this book. For our website, in addition to a number of different interviews I did while I was at Focus on the Story, which you can find first and foremost on our Patreon page, and then eventually they'll show up on our aroundthelens.com main page, and you can also find that stuff. I'm going to put all that together, all the interviews I did, all eventually be put together into a special episode of the show that will fear on the podcast. So, anyways, like I said, check out that contest. I'd love to give this book away to someone deserving. So, just like I said, just email me at info@aroundthelens.com. All right, let's get into this week's show. We got a lot of great topics to talk about this evening. Let me pull up the first and foremost, talking about technology. We usually put the techno stuff at the end of the show, but I thought this was significant enough for me to bring up at the very beginning. I'm a big fan of Panasonic myself, so when I heard about this new camera, I was like, well, we got to talk about this. So Panasonic, they recently came out with the S1, the S1R. That was their first foray into the sort of medium format mirrorless cameras. Now they're coming out with the S1H, which is essentially their kind of answer to the GH series of cameras. It's a new camera, the same S1 series that can shoot 6K anamorphic or 5.9K 16:9. So again, if you're someone who shoots a lot of video, this will be a godsend for you, because you're getting not only the higher resolution, which allows you a lot more cropping if you want to edit and export in a 4K format, but again, other features that may come about. So I know not everyone in here are necessarily Panasonic enthusiasts like I am, but let's go around the lens and let's talk to everybody about what they use. I guess we'll start with you, Stefanie. What do you use out there in Afghanistan?
I still use my 5D Mark III most of the time, and then I like to keep it pretty simple here. I go with the 35mm lens or a 24-70 wide lens. It's a fairly big camera to have around, and I also have the Sony A7R, just obviously a lot smaller. And a lot less intrusive, depending on where I go. The Canon is a pretty good camera to have around in bad weather conditions. It's pretty good in wind and rain even, and I think the Sony isn't that great for that. So switching it out every once in a while. But I think it's a good combo to have out here. Bit of a smaller mirrorless one, and then the DSLR as well.
Have you ever considered Panasonic as a camera choice for you, or are you pretty happy with the Canon? Or Sony?
No, I have. Yeah, actually, the S1R is one I've been looking at for a while. Not a camera to try out here in Kabul, unfortunately, but it's definitely something on my list for the summer when I'm heading for a visit back to the U.S. and back to Europe. So.
Okay. Cool. Stefanie, Leah, what do you shoot with? Leah, you have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
I always get muted. I just shoot with the Canons they gave me, which I think is a 1DX and I think a Mark IV maybe. I'm not really a big camera nerd, honestly. We have the Sonys in the White House, and I grudgingly decided I need to learn them because, as Steph mentioned, I just finished a big project on mass shooting survivor community, and it would have been much better if I had a silent camera in a lot of those situations. Especially, I don't know what it sounds like when it switches between video and still, or when it like turns off when it's shooting video. But I actually scared someone like once when I was doing an interview when it did that really loud clicking noise because these are mass shooting survivors. So after that, I learned to like warn everyone, and I was really careful. But it would have been, there are just some sensitive situations that it would be ideal to have that. I just don't like looking through a screen personally, but I guess I'm just old school, and the necessity is going to win out in the end for me. So
yes, indeed. Yeah, very old soul. Yeah, that was one of the biggest things I got. Took me a while to get over when I purchased the GH4, and actually, like, I had to look at a viewfinder and a screen inside my viewfinder instead of the actual, looking through the lens as I've been used to with the Canon 5D Mark II. But you know what? You get used to it over time, and then you grow to appreciate all the additional information you get from being able to look at a screen instead of just through the lens. And then the GH5, it increased and it gotten the viewfinder a lot better. And the S1R, the viewfinder isn't even better than that. From what I hear, it's the next level. Of course, Travis, you've been using Sony and viewfinders and electronic viewfinders and a lot. And going back to what you're saying, Leah, yeah, the silent shooting capability is probably one of the best aspects of the mirrorless revolution, the mirrorless day, and it's one of the few talked about, I think, aspects of it, and one of the most important. Travis, I know recently a lot of Sony cameras actually went down in price, or there was some sales on some Sony cameras. Would you like to say anything about that? Can you say anything about that? Or should we just go out and buy some great cameras on some great deals?
No, I mean, Sony's especially, if you were asking about the silent recording and stuff like that, it doesn't make a sound, like, to the point of, like, it almost is disturbingly quiet, where right. I've shot video and stuff like that, and then had to pull actors aside and shoot stills, and they're like, "Are you shooting?" And they're like,
it's very confusing, yeah.
Let's turn on the sound because it made them comfortable again. But, all these mirrors, and the Panasonic's, doing amazing stuff, and it's been doing stuff for a while now, especially video. But Sony, for all around is just incredible, especially with the new speed boost. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just totally interrupted you. I'm sorry. I actually have a question for you, Steph. Or I don't know if I just made a total huge assumption, but when I hold our Sonys, I feel like they feel very delicate to me, like in comparison to the Canons and bodies that I've used and beat to heck over the years. And I'm just wondering, like, how resilient do you get? Like, how resilient are these bodies? Because I feel like I'm going to break it.
Totally. I kind of feel the same every once in a while. I don't think it's I think it's a great camera to shoot with. I don't think it's the best camera to take out into, I don't know, I guess harsh environments. And I think the S1R is a lot better with that, I guess the way it's built. So that's why I said I do still like using my Canon, because it's it's a really well-built camera. Obviously, it's very heavy as well, which isn't great. Mm-hmm. It's also very much in your face, especially when you're, photographing children or, people who've been living around war and, who've had, like, guns in their faces. And, big camera isn't really a nice thing to have. So that's why I do like using the Sony as well. But, I guess I wish it was a bit stronger built. I do worry sometimes taking it out when it's raining or snowing and there's harsh winds and sand and all of that stuff. So I guess that's why I switched it up still.
Well, I've taken my Sony into safari in Africa, behind waterfalls in Iceland, and then they're pretty sturdy. They're not. You got to watch out for the mirror and changing because your eye sensor is exposed a lot more than a mirrorless. So changing the lenses is something mainly to worry about, but they're a lot sturdier than you would think, and certainly Canons are built as tanks and for a reason, and but Sony's pretty good.
I feel like I have bad habits that I've developed, like having that, like I changed a lens in the middle of a river in Mexico when I was with the migrants, which was very bad idea, but I was also like, well, I'm gonna try it and hopefully I don't drop anything, and I didn't. But yeah, I feel like, and also like covering weather disasters and hurricane force rain and whatnot, I would wonder how Sony would do in that situation.
It's just kind of a tank, so
yeah. I also need to be better, like nicer to my stuff.
Leah, was this the river that you said you were like up to your elbows in, and you had like everything in your personal possession double wrapped in plastic bags? Yep,
that was the same situation.
Yeah, that was an awesome photo, by the way. You captured there, and definitely, obviously, horrendous event for the people who had to go through it, but you captured it very well. So. Yeah. Do you plan to cover any more stuff on the border? Is that in line for you at all? Yeah,
I would. I have a lot of ideas, and I'm probably going to start a new project soon. So with DC, like, because we're in the traveling pool with the president, like, that takes our first priority. So I do have like obviously right now there's 4 of us and we rotate through that, but you know, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows, but the news is a little wild over here all the time. In terms of, like, you know, people are constantly wanting content. So it does drive that quite a bit. But the great thing about my bosses is that they do recognize the value of sending us other places and allowing us to get out and about. So I'm hopefully going to do more of that. And that story and that region is also really close to my heart as well. So,
absolutely. Ron, is the S1H the straw that's going to break the camel back to get you to come over to Panasonic?
No, but you know, Travis would be happy to hear that I was really investigating the Sony A9 and the Trinity there. It's only 10 grand right now for the setup. It was 12 before. It's a really great deal right now. I was really considering heavily that one until I heard that there's a Sony A9 Mark II coming out soon, this year, next year, whatever.
Rumor and speculation.
So now I'm like,
we'll see about that.
Travis cannot comment on rumors.
I don't know, but I said, I'm going to wait.
That A9 with the new upgrade for the especially the autofocus and the animal autofocus and the eye autofocus makes that a new camera, and at $1,000 less right now, it's still a bargain, and it's going to last a long time. That thing, I was shooting on the side of a professional rugby game, and I would literally just swoop around because I heard something and I was catching focus. It was so fast, and it had 20 frames a second. And that thing's a beast. It is an absolute beast. It's an incredible camera.
Well, I still may, or I might buy that $10,000 full frame.
I saw the.
Excuse me, the medium format one we talked about last week.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
You guys want to buy me a new camera?
Buy you one? Yeah, I know. Well, one of my students, actually, my student is a portrait photographer, and I was going to buy it for him, actually, for his portrait business. But then he told me, he's opening a clothing line instead. He doesn't want to do.
Oh my God!
He wants to do photography like on the side. He wants to do fashion.
I bet we can find you a really worthy person who would die to have that. Yeah.
Speaking of cameras, I got to try out and get my hands on the GFX 100. This is the new 100 megapixel camera from Fuji. They had a Fuji rep out at the Focus on the Story event, and so I got to play with this not yet released camera just for a few minutes. Didn't really get to do anything with it. You couldn't stick a memory card into it, so really not an opportunity to give it like a full rundown, but just holding in my hands for a few minutes. I've forgotten how big full frame cameras are, especially like a medium format camera. Yeah, this thing is huge. I've been pretty like spoiled by these Micro Four Thirds cameras in the GH series, but this thing was pretty huge. But the image quality was off the charts. And if you're looking for something that has, again, unmatched image quality, medium format sensor, and is just the mere cost of $10,000. Then really, there's nothing stopping you from just pre-ordering this camera right now.
What's impressive about that camera is that it's got the stabilization on the sensor. It's not big. It's the same size as like a 1DX or something like that. It's not in terms of like you make it sound like it's this massive. It's actually not that big for what it is.
It's massive to me because I've been so used to mirrorless cameras. Honestly, if you gave me a D5, I'd probably react the same way because it's the exact same size.
Yeah.
We have to get a workout in, so.
Yeah.
That's why I just do my curls with my cameras.
Camera curls.
Absolutely, 100%. That's the way to do it, especially when you're on shoot and you're waiting for stuff to happen. Just get your reps in.
When you're sitting in a motorcade, in a van, very glorious.
I'm sure that's been, you got some good motorcade stories, huh?
Indeed. You know what? I jumped the gun, everybody, and I should have talked to these lovely ladies about their awesome work that was featured on the Washington Post's Top 100. Let's start with you, Leah, because, who knows? You could have to jump out of here at any minute. I'm pulling up the photograph that you shot. Let's see if it'll work. Yep, okay. It's this photo shot here of, let me pull up the caption, sorry. Hope Hicks, she resigned from the DC, and you caught this photo. Actually, I remember us talking about this photograph back when this list first came out, and it was just like, you got this shot that almost looks like, runway model-esque of, again, it looks too perfect, right? You got the, the lighting on her, and it's all laid out, and you got the Capitol behind her. Why don't you go ahead and tell us the story behind this photo, and then, we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards.
Yeah, that photo is going to haunt me until the end of my days. Well, I had just started here at Reuters. I think that was in March, and I started in January. So yeah, actually the timing was also ridiculous. So that was after, I think she had testified for 9 hours in a committee. And we spent 7 hours trying to get her. So we had missed her coming in the morning, and that being in DC, there's a lot of waiting for people to walk by you, right, which is really fun and very glamorous Indeed. Situation. But these are, historic people. This is a very historic time. So it is important to have these moments. And it's really challenging to get unique stuff. So this kind of just follows into the rule that we talk about in photojournalism of getting there early and staying late. So sure. By the time the day, our boss, we didn't have the photo, and we were like, we need the photo. So we stayed and people kept leaving, and it was just a team effort. And I went with my gut. I just moved so I could see a corner better. And I knew what she was wearing, and I saw her and her people walk by at the very end of the hall. And I've been waiting for 7 hours. I hadn't eaten anything. I hadn't gone to the bath. Well, actually, I did eat a chocolate bar that I bought from the store in the Capitol, or I ate a few bites of it. And so I ran after her and got a few photos of her from inside, which I never turned in. And then I don't know, I just followed her out, and there were these videographers with her. And it was a very strange thing because she had to walk from, if you've ever been at the Capitol, she left at the visitor center at the bottom, ground level, and you have to walk up these stairs to get to the street. And that's what she had to do. And she was surrounded by videographers and me. I was the only still photographer because it was so late at that point. And then apparently I was told that it wasn't very common in DC to actually follow them. A lot of people would have just stayed inside and just had that photo of her from inside. But I don't know. Maybe someone will reach out and be like, that's so untrue. But anyway, so we were backpedaling upstairs, and it was weird because it was very quiet. And I had this strange moment where I realized that me and Hope were the only women in that situation. And the men were kind of whispering questions at her. And she was trying not to fall, obviously. And it was just kind of odd. And then one of them was like, well, at least you look good. And I just had this moment where I was like, oh, really? It was just this kind of just woman to woman. It's not she could see me, but I was like, wow, I just had this I don't know. It's hard to describe that, but
you felt for her.
We've all been there, right? And it was why did you have to do that? But anyway, so yeah, so I always shoot in manual, and so when I first came out, all of my exposures were wrong, and I chimp, and I looked at the back of my camera, and I was yelling at myself in my head to fix it, and then I was yelling at myself to get the Capitol in the photo behind her. Right. Just get down, get the Capitol in, and and yeah, and then she was gone, and I looked through my photos, and we send them off the camera often because they want to be fast as possible. And just a last note on this, talking about being a woman in the industry. When I chose what photos to send, I purposefully did not send any photos of her looking down. And that's something in DC we often, in a situation, will send several photos where people have different expressions or, you know, whatever. And I just felt that, A, it would have been disingenuous because a photo like that of her walking and looking down, you know, that sends a different signal. And it didn't, to me, really capture the feeling of the moment, which is that she was basically walking through like this in this powerful way, like, again, politics aside. And yeah, so I never sent one of those photos. And I made that conscious.
So you have ethics, then, you're telling us.
Well, I think it's gendered too, because I'm not sure how many men would have thought about that. Or maybe, you know, maybe a lot of women wouldn't have it, you know, but for me, it was kind of like, I didn't really want to give someone the option to try and paint that picture in that way, because that wasn't how it was, you know, regardless of anything else, just from the moment, that did not show what it was. And that's a really like very weird, wonky thing from this like bizarre situation. But I thought about it again because the Times recently did a piece on her, and they used a file photo that I think Tom took, and he posted the take. Tom Brenner. Okay. And it's a photo of her looking down, and it's like she's got really heavy makeup on, and it's like very much like kind of glam-esque is what they made it look like. And he kind of posted the take, and it's just like it's like a photo from a meeting. Yeah. That they kind of toned up. And it was like, of course they picked that one where she's like looking down, and it kind of like turns her into just the model, which is like what I think a lot of people see. And I don't know, we could go into that weirdness. That's a whole nother like very DC thing. But anyway, I rambled. I'm done.
Well, where's the lights? Because obviously I can see she's got video lights on her, but where is the light source that's on her that's actually illuminating her? Is that also just like video lights, or what's lighting her right there?
Yeah, thank God for those video guys, because that was it. We had several on either side of her, and then just because it was night and winter, there were no leaves on the trees, so you could see the Capitol behind her that was lit up. I don't think that would have happened had it been in the summer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's a great capture, and it's like I said, it's probably had a life of its own. Do you ever get any responses? Like, do you ever hear back from any of the subjects who you've taken pictures of? Like, I don't know, has Hope Hicks somehow reached out to you, or somehow have you heard back from her that she's seen this photograph? Have you ever get anything response like that from anyone you've ever photographed?
I have not heard from Hope Hicks, but I did hear from the son of the lawyer in the photo, one of her lawyers, who wanted like a print of it.
Yeah.
And just wait till after the show airs, and she'll be contacting you.
Sure.
We'll pass on your information to her if you don't mind, when she calls us up.
Yeah, she'll contact me to get in touch with you, and I'll be like, "Oh, Hope, thanks for calling me." No, absolutely not. That won't happen. How does it feel to be featured? You know, obviously you work. No, you're a freelancer, right?
No, I'm a staffer.
Staffer for Washington Post.
For the Reuters in DC.
Well, how does it feel, regardless, to be featured on? You know, again, recognized as one of the top 20 photos of 2018.
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's just been kind of it's very different world from what I have experience with. So, I mean, I'm glad that happened. It was a team effort. But I was like, okay, so now I need to do something else like after that, because it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's really amazing, and it's not at all like, I think it's a lesson in like keeping your mind open to like career opportunities, because it's not really like I didn't ever endeavor to cover politics, and I did that because it makes me uncomfortable, and I wanted the challenge. It's basically the opposite of what I've covered and what I gravitate towards. So I think it's just a really good lesson in that like you may have this idea in your head of like what you want to do, or what you think you want to do, and you may end up doing something that's very different from that for a while, and it could be this kind of like twisty turny path, and you just don't know like where it's going to lead you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just noticed there's this guy looking at you in the foreground of the image. You know who this guy is?
It looks like you're in his way or something.
I can't see it.
It's like in the right-hand side of the image.
It's in the darkest part on the right.
Yeah, it just popped in.
I think that would be one of her entourage. So she had several people, like lawyers, and then I'm guessing, I don't know if there was like an assistant or anything.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, she actually the only thing she said was, watch out, because this guy was about to run into a pole.
Oh my gosh.
And she like warned him.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing she ever said. So I think that they were like, because it was so weird, guys. It was weird. It was a strange experience.
Indeed.
The complete opposite of Steph's life over there. It's like, it's like our overlap is the helicopters overhead. That's about it.
There you go.
And the policy, right?
Well, since we're talking about Steph, let's move on to Steph. Steph, you also had a photograph featured in the top 100 of 2018, featured by the Washington Post. Far different subject. This is a former child soldiers in Yemeni, South Sudan. So for those of you listening, it looks like a child soldier. He is sandwiched between two, probably looks like adults wearing jackets. Definitely a striking image. Can you talk to us about the story behind this image? Stefanie? Did we lose you?
Did she get muted?
I didn't mute her.
Oh, maybe
no, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I think Mike just cut out. I don't know if you were asking a question, but I'm sorry.
She was asleep.
That.
I was just asking you. Yeah, micro sleep. No, I was just asking you. Obviously, we were just looking at the photograph of the young Sudanese soldier, I believe, in Yemeni, and I was just wondering if you could talk to that photo for a minute. Like exactly what was the story behind that photo? It's the young child between, looks like two adults. He's kind of sandwiched between two adults.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Sorry for the connection. It happens. Yeah, so that was last year when I was based in South Sudan. I was working for AFP. And we flew down to Yemeni that day. It was there were supposed to be several hundred children released from the army that day. So it was pretty chaotic. There were lots of kids, lots of soldiers, lots of their army commanders, and then obviously a lot of people trying to facilitate and help them. Making that transition from being a child soldier to going back to your quote-unquote normal life, I can't imagine what that would be like. Pretty tough. So I guess I had the whole day walking around and meeting some of the kids and just seeing where they were coming from and hearing a bit of their stories. And yeah, just walking around. Early in the morning, I met this little boy, and he was waiting in line to sign up for I think some counseling services that were offered, and he wasn't really looking anywhere. He was just standing between some of the other soldiers, and the other three people in the photo are also children, although much older, so probably more like 16, 17. The little boy was 9 years old. And it kind of struck me because he was standing there, not really paying attention or not really talking to anybody, but just being in his own little world. And it made me wonder what he'd been going through. And so it was all pretty fast moving that day. People or the kids were going from one area to the next. So I only had a couple of seconds to a couple of seconds who, sorry. I think something that's up with my Skype. I'm not
we can
sure.
hear you just fine.
Here you go.
Oh, sorry. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I just had a couple of seconds with him before he was moving on, and I guess didn't really look at the photo until much later that day. And I did see the little boy throughout the day, and there's a couple more times I was able to photograph him. But it kind of brought it home to me a little bit. The war in South Sudan's been going on for several decades, and there's been a lot of back and forth, and there hasn't been a lot of progress, I guess, in terms of peace talks. There have been peace talks, but then there hasn't really been a deal that's been lasting. And you have little kids who are involved in this war, who are victims of this war, and I think this little boy really shows this.
What does it feel to be like, have this photograph recognized on the list of the Washington Post Top 100? I mean, are you glad that this this issue is being featured?
Yeah, I guess what's great about it is that South Sudan isn't on the I guess on our agendas, and it's not really a war that's been talked about quite a lot. So having it recognized, I guess, gives the photo more exposure. I mean, it got a lot of exposure during that week that I filed it, but I think, yeah, having it on that list as well gives it another opportunity to, I guess, to kind of show people what's been going on in South Sudan, and the war, it's been going on for such a long time.
Absolutely. All right, great. Anything else you'd like to add about that photograph?
Trying to, I guess from a personal perspective, it's nice to get recognition as well. I think as a photographer, you go through stages of self-doubt every once in a while. I guess self-doubt combined with wanting to push further and wanting to do more and more, and I think recognition gives you exactly that. Maybe a bit of affirmation, but at the same time, even more drive to push further and to do more and work harder, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned you've been on the road for 12 years, right?
Yes, pretty much on the road, meaning I haven't lived in one location for longer than 2 years, I guess, at the very most.
Right. Do you miss, having sort of, going back home? I mean, or living back home? Or are you happy sort of bouncing around?
I do every once in a while, especially, going home over the summers, seeing friends. And a lot of my friends are in the same industry as well. So a lot of them are also based either overseas or kind of have been in and out of different places. So a lot of my friends do understand, but I do miss, I guess I do miss a stable life, if you want to call that, every once in a while. But then at the same time, if I do have it, then I miss going out again. So I think it's a little bit of a I don't know. It's both positive and negative. I do like being out here, and I do like covering issues that are maybe a bit more challenging to cover, especially being out here in Afghanistan now. I do like being out here as a woman and having the opportunity to give a bit of a different insight on the situation here and on the war here. You get a lot of men out here photographing, and a couple of females as well, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think, I guess I like Yeah, I like going out. I like meeting people. I like it's both a challenge, but also a huge learning curve in terms of learning from people, learning to understand the situation a lot better, learning to understand a war a lot better. And
Yeah.
I guess almost the more you learn, the more confusing it gets sometimes. But yeah, no, I do like being out and about.
I was in Iraq for a short period of time, and it was just interesting to come back to the United States, or again the first world, and just be amazed by what people like decided to get up in arms about, or get worried about. Whereas again in sort of a country where they have less, it's just. Do you feel that same way? Like when you go back home, you go back to sort of the first world, do you kind of feel like people are just complaining about the most menial things when you see what people have to go through and the suffering that occurs in some place like Afghanistan?
Maybe so, but I also don't want to. I guess I want to acknowledge whatever people do. I don't know, complain about, but yeah, obviously there's a lot of different issues going on here, and so the things people have to deal with here on a daily basis are quite different from back in the U.S. or back in Europe, both places that I go to frequently. Yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get to is there any adjustment period, like when you get back and to the again your hometown, and it's like things are relatively easy, with regard to access to things and safety and security. Is there an adjustment period?
Yeah, definitely. Usually it's pretty fast, but I think one thing that I miss the most is just walking around. I mean, I can walk around here in Kabul as well as in the country, but it's just not as easy, and you always have in the back of your mind, to be careful, to not stand out as much, and you obviously with a camera you do stand out quite a bit.
Sure.
So walking around is really nice.
Just out of curiosity, do you have to wear a veil in Afghanistan because you're a woman, or how does that work?
Be careful. Sorry?
Do you have to wear a veil or anything because you're a woman?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, definitely. Headscarf, and then usually a longer jacket, long sleeve, that kind of thing. And we've had a bit of a rough week this week with explosions most days here in Kabul. So these are the kind of things that obviously I don't have at home as much, and it does take a bit of adjustment. There's certain sounds that might sound like shooting or an explosion, and it might tick you off for a second back home, but then it's pretty quickly, I think, that you do adjust to life back home, and it's also pretty quickly that I readjust to life here in Kabul. It's maybe two different worlds, but both you get used to for
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, for better or worse. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
where are you from, if I may ask?
German originally. Long time ago.
So is that where you go home when you visit?
Yeah, that's where I go home. Usually I go between Germany, London, and the US. So those are my three locations. But it's pretty far a trip from Afghanistan. Already going to Europe. So pretty far out east.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about restrictions on what you can photograph. This is a story actually brought up by Zach, but Zach's not here tonight, so I'm going to have to try and represent it the best I can. But essentially, the Supreme Court, made a ruling here that essentially made it easier for police to arrest you for filming them. So, of course, police have a whole litany of reasons they can arrest you, whether it be loitering or, any sort of, things that are going on. And, of course, if there's an instance where you're perhaps filming something, of course, and Zach has experienced this. I can't speak from experience, but Zach has had experiences or run-ins with the police that have made him feel as though, again, if he films something they're not liking, and they want to use a reason to arrest him, they potentially can. Well, this Supreme Court ruling, according to what I'm reading here, apparently makes it easier for police officers to do that. Throw it over to you first. Leah, again, you work in the Capitol a lot. You work, probably around things where police are around. Do you ever feel like maybe it's perhaps difficult to photograph, or do you feel like you're fully protected by the fact that you're a photojournalist working for a news organization, or do you feel like perhaps again if you're photographing something the police don't like, that they might want to arrest you?
I think it depends on where you're working. So I did a lot of protest coverage in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and Oakland. And the police there, depending on where you were, like in Berkeley, they didn't have a lot of experience with protests and with violent protests. So they were pretty violent with us. We had a freelancer sustain a concussion. We had people who were maced. We had people who had their phones like knocked out of their hands with their batons. I mean, I've been threatened with arrest several times, and really kind of the way that I mitigate that is not only do I have my badge on me and I'll pull it out in that moment and say I'm press, which doesn't work. Like, they don't care. But I do that and I back up and I comply with what they're saying to an extent, because at the end of the day, like, even if you're going to win the argument, which I think the article mentioned, it doesn't really matter if you're off in a cruiser somewhere or you're in a wagon somewhere, because you're still missing what's happening. So you kind of have to make like decisions in the moment about how you're going to mitigate an angry cop, which is usually to go somewhere else that he is not at. Or for me, like I keep my voice down. I move. This is not to be insulting, but like I grew up in Colorado around like horses and cattle and stuff, and they teach you never to be like fast movements. You don't walk where they can't see you. I do the same thing with police. Like I try not to move quickly. Yeah, you don't want to be behind them because you don't want protesters to see you there. But like, I just like, I'm very calm. I try and stay very even with them. And I think that we're having like a lot of tensions that are coming up in the U.S. and there are a lot of tensions often with police and people who are members of the press. And so, I mean, I think it's probably in some places it will get worse, especially places where they're not really, that they either don't care or they're not, people aren't fully aware of their rights, and the police may not be fully aware of what they can and cannot do. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting time for sure. There's a lot of things that are, it was interesting when you were talking about the adjustment period, because I think the U.S. is not Afghanistan, but we certainly are having a lot of issues that are coming up, and I think we're having a lot more violence, and I think that we will, in this next election, we'll see a lot more violence.
Yeah. Have you seen people, on average, react to you differently as press now that supposedly all this, enemy of the people, media, that kind of stuff? Have you seen a difference in the last year or two?
Yeah, I mean, I've had it, it's very interesting because before the election, everyone hated me, across the board, liberals, conservatives, because we were the base of all the issues, the media. After that, I had a lot of probably more liberal people would often thank me, just randomly, or they would say things like, we really need we really need you guys, or whatever. And then I've had the experience where, I cover the president, so we attend his rallies, and people are pretty hostile, just verbally. We had someone charge the press pen and get in and start shoving people over, and we were lucky that that's all that he did. I'm kind of like a paranoid person, so I carry medical supplies with me. We may travel with the president, but there's security's there for him. So if a crowd turned on us or anything like that, like we're on our own in that situation. And it's not really a situation I can describe without, I think one just has to experience it with, people kind of jeering as a crowd. I think right now it's more of a show, but it certainly is trickling into, other aspects. So.
Yeah, it seems more frighteningly close to the line than ever before. That could easily turn to either way. So
but I'm also used to, like, in the Bay, I mean, we got physically assaulted by protesters, and I mean from both sides.
Right.
So it's not like it's almost like, okay, it's kind of unfortunately a continuum of that, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Stefanie, obviously you're not in the U.S., so you're not beholden to what the Supreme Court says. But I mean, do you ever, when you're trying to shoot things in Afghanistan or anywhere you've been internationally, where you've been, have you been able to get free reign, or are you potentially curtailed by authority figures?
Yeah, I have to say that Afghanistan is actually a lot easier than South Sudan. If I'm comparing the two. So over here, both the army, the police, they're usually pretty open with photographers shooting around the city or anywhere really. I mean, there's obviously limitations. They don't always want to be photographed themselves. Yeah, I mean, usually, compared to South Sudan, it's pretty free. So I get a good range of things that I can do here. I think what's more difficult is with a bit of a conservative society, women in certain areas, and that this is not to be generalized at all. It's a couple certain areas in the country tend to be a bit more photo shy or don't want to expose their faces. So get that quite a bit. But that all is very different to my experience in South Sudan, where even with a press badge, taking photos absolutely anywhere is pretty much a nightmare, especially in the capital in Juba. There was one day I was out. A demonstration right after the U.S. had imposed sanctions on several politicians of the country. I was heading out with my camera. Demonstrators were just walking down the road. Most of them were soldiers, but wearing civilian clothes. Some of them still had their uniforms, and I got my camera out. I did have my press badge. So I was legally allowed to take photos, but in South Sudan that doesn't really mean much at all. So I started trying to take a couple of photos, and people immediately were like, no photos, okay, and they get pretty violent in their words. So I tried to put the camera away slowly and walk away slowly, but they already started chasing me down pretty much straight away, and there was this angry mob of soldiers throwing rocks and I don't know, pieces of wood, whatever they could find and pick up on the floor, and pretty much chased me and tried to drag me down, tried to grab my camera, rip my camera away from me, and pretty much chased me back into my compound. And I remember running down the road, and the guards at the compound I was living in saw me, and they opened the door, and pretty much I was able to run in with my camera, and these guys then kept pounding on the door trying to get in. So that is not an unlikely scenario to deal with in South Sudan, unfortunately. You have a lot of very angry authorities, and especially authorities not wanting things exposed, not wanting photographers to operate, even though you have the right credentials and you work with a photo agency. So pretty rough going there. So a lot easier here, as I said.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're going to jump to our last topic this evening because we're getting close to the end of the show.
I guess has to jump off though, unfortunately, time-wise, I think.
Lady, you got to jump off, or you can hang out with us for another few more minutes.
She's muted.
I didn't mute her. She must mute herself.
I muted myself. I'm sorry.
Okay.
What are we looking at?
10, 15 minutes at the most. Is that okay? Come on, Leah. Yeah. Come on, Leah. Come on, Leah. You can do it.
I can do 10 minutes.
Okay. Before we jump to the next topic, I do want to give a quick shout out to Michael Landsman, who was the only person at Focus on the Story 2019 who recognized me and came up to me and said, he recognized me from the show. So
recognized. You got it.
I got recognized at an event. I'm so excited. It's pretty awesome. So that was pretty neat. But yeah, big shout out to superfan Mike. Hope you're enjoying the show. Hope you're watching and listening right now. But anyways, quick last story here. Yemeni journalist was denied entry to receive his Pulitzer Prize. So, this is Mad Al-Zakiri, I hope I'm saying that right, was his first journalist to win a Pulitzer Prize. And he was denied entry to the U.S. because, of course, there was a lot of rules with regard to different countries, and Yemen was one of these countries that restricted from entering the U.S. So he tried to get a waiver for this. It wasn't in time for him to get his award. His team accepted the award on his behalf, and he was they held up a cell phone with him. He was apparently Skyping and watching it. Obviously a sad incident. Obviously he earned the award. Should have been recognized for it. Should have been able to get in the United States to receive his award, but of course, things being as they are, he was not able to do that. We'll throw it over to you, Leah, really quick. What are your thoughts on this? Obviously you work a lot. Obviously you work internationally. Do you have any feelings about this sort of incident? Is this fair in your opinion, or do you think there should have been exceptions made to allow this photojournalist to collect his award?
Well, we're seeing more of this now. I think that there were some people who were also barred from the Oscars, possibly, if I remember properly, who were also, I think, from countries on the banned list. I can't really wade into politics as much, but I will say that I do have a concern that worldwide I think it's getting more dangerous for journalists. There's less of a line of, I don't know if respect is the right word, but maybe it is. And I think it's happening more in Western countries where they might have led before in trying to speak out and protect journalists. So that is a concern, and I think that we're seeing echoes of that. And I think that there are certainly policies in place that, kind of make us realize that, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that we saw as norms that are being challenged and changed, and I think that words have power and meaning, and when you have leaders who don't always craft them in a way that might support, it really echoes around the world. You see that reverberating. That being said, I did hear that our journalists, our Reuters journalists who were recently released from Myanmar, they didn't know why they were released, but someone did comment that Mike Pence said something in front of a bunch of cameras. He asked the leader about the situation and that they wish that they would free these journalists. And so that with some other pressure, there was kind of a thought that maybe that had a difference.
Yeah.
It made a difference. And I think there's something to be said for that, to recognize that he did do that, but also that in him doing that is the power of words, and that is the power of public pressure.
Sure.
So I think we should be concerned. In the U.S., there's a lot of concerns. Like I said, we're worried about safety. We had journalists who were killed in a mass shooting last year, and so I think we just all need to, as citizens in the U.S. and in places where we maybe have more press freedom, I would hope that people would think about what they can do in their own spaces to work on protecting that before it's too late.
Absolutely.
Not to be super like downer, but
no. Totally didn't bring the whole atmosphere of the show down at all. Stefanie, obviously you work overseas, but you have, of course, the luxury of being. Where are you a citizen of Germany or the United States? I know you say you move around a lot. Where do you have multiple citizenships?
My passport is German. That doesn't mean a lot after a long time. I lived in the U.S. for a long time as well.
Okay. But, I mean, obviously you have a bit more freedom of movement than perhaps this Yemeni photojournalist. But, I mean, obviously you work probably alongside local photojournalists, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, any thoughts on, this sort of incident and again, sort of the state of things that are going on?
Yeah, definitely, and I think I echo what Leah said in terms of there's maybe less respect and more danger for journalists, and yeah, sure, like positive things happen. I mean, the release of the Reuters journalists in Myanmar was one of the pretty incredible things happening. But yeah, so I do hear about similar scenarios here in Afghanistan quite a bit. There was a friend of mine, colleague. From the New York Times recently trying to apply for a European visa to Italy, stuck in India for several weeks at the embassy. There's no embassy here in Afghanistan, so you make your way all the way to India, which already is the cost of a flight and the cost of a hotel, and then staying there for 3 weeks waiting for a visa, which in the end that journalist didn't get. Even though it was a work assignment for the New York Times. And and these are the kind of things I hear very often. There's another colleague of mine at AFP trying to apply for a visa to go to Paris right now for a photo award that he won. And I think he's going to get it. I hope so. But at the same time, it's never sure, and a lot of my colleagues and friends here do have to go through that quite frequently. And it's, I think, especially for my friends who have to go to India, it's a bit of a humiliating process. Being told by an embassy, no, you can't go, and that's because of your nationality, even journalism long purposes. And yeah, it's becoming increasingly tougher, and it's becoming very tough for journalists who are working overseas and who might have a passport that requires them to get visas to more countries than others. And I think it's hugely unfair, especially if you have a big media organization backing you, especially if you're going because you've won an award that you should be there to pick up in person.
Yeah. Ron, is there any chance that they won't let you back in the United States or the mainland? Do you think they'll just say, hey, let's write off Hawaii, and they won't let you back?
They always check my fingers for pineapple juice every time I fly to the mainland. I don't know.
Okay.
Must be the way I look.
Indeed.
But can you imagine? Let's say as an American, turn the tables here, and you're flying to Yemen to accept an award, and they say, sorry, no Americans. How'd you like those apples?
Indeed. All right, well, we're getting to the end of our show. I want to make sure we give a quick... So Leah can shout out. Leah, where can people find out more about your work before you get out of here?
I'm always muted. My work, you can go to Reuters, and I don't know, you can search it, or you can go to my website, which is my name. It's leahmillis.com. But yeah, I gotta run. But thank you guys so much, and Steph, it was an honor to be in your vocal presence, and it was really great. So I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Leah, for coming on. Great seeing you at Focus on the Story. Hopefully we get to interact with each other sometime in the future. Again, you're always welcome back on the show. Have a great night. I'll see you later.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Stefanie, where can people find out more about you and your work?
I guess, but different now because I'm freelance now, so a lot of my work is still with AFP. I'm now doing stuff for different outlets, The Guardian, Foreign Policy, some others. Doing a lot more writing here as well, which is exciting. So exciting to be able to do both writing and photos.
Okay. Great. So AFP, I think you have a website. I think I linked to it in the show notes. I don't know if you want to mention your actual. Don't you have a website? You have your website address.
I think so. Yes, I do. No, I think you linked it on your website.
Okay. Well, go to the show notes. Go check that out. Go see more of what what Stefanie is doing in Afghanistan and all over the world. You're in Afghanistan right now. Where do you think you're going to up next? Or do you know where you're going to go next?
Good question. Yemen, maybe?
Yemen?
No,
okay.
I don't know.
You can say hi to, I forget his name, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Matt.
too. Yes. No, I think I'll stay here for a bit. I think there's still a lot more to explore, a lot more stories to do. We have elections coming up, possibly, hopefully. Well, we'll see. That's always, it's changing on a daily basis. But I think I'll be here for possibly a couple years. Yeah, I still feel pretty good about being here. It's a very interesting place. Like the people, I like the culture. So yeah, I'll be here for a while.
Okay. Sounds great. All right. Sounds good. Travis, you got anything for us before we sign off tonight?
No, but as always, if you want to follow up on any of the topics or have good topics for us, please reach out to us at Around the Lens. We always want your input, and let us know what you think.
Ron, any updates
and if you'd like to sponsor our show, please go to our Patreon page.
What's that Patreon?
Throw us $1.
What's that address?
Patreon.com/AroundTheLens, Dave.
That's right. You named it. And I'll be posting a bunch of stuff on there. All the interviews I shot at Focus on the Story. A lot of great interviews. A lot of significant photojournalists from the community. So get that stuff first. I've got, again, Patrick Brown on right now. And by the way, a ton of people I've met who hopefully be guests on the show here in the future. Patrick Brown as well. So look out for those folks in the near future. But again, if you want to get all the cool content we're creating, Zach did a great interview with an NPPA photo editor, magazine designer, whatnot, which I just posted, which you can get on our show. It was the last episode. And so if you want to get more stuff like that ahead of time and also support the creation of stuff like that, go to patreon.com. Throw us a bone, throw us $1 to get access to all that stuff early. We truly appreciate it. It'll help push things forward with regard to our visual journalism discussion show. All right, Steph. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to be on the show. Truly appreciate it. You're always welcome back. Thank you for being on the show.
Definitely.
I'm guessing you start the day now, or you get to go back to sleep?
No, it's almost 7 a.m., so I think I'm going to go for a run in my garden.
Okay.
Can't really go outside.
No.
And then start the day.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, have fun out there in Afghanistan. Stay safe. For Travis Keys and Ron Hamilton, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 177, and we are out!